The legend of Bluefeather offers us a glimpse into the progression of events in North America during the Cataclysm. When woven together with other Native American legends about the Thunderbird, a very clear picture begins to emerge. The legend of Bluefeather is not a quaint fireside song and dance cut from whole cloth. It is a narrative captured in the oral history of the survivors, who witnessed the formation of not just the Great Lakes in Devil's Lake, Wisconsin, but the coronal loops that sculpted the eastern half of the United States. Their story tells of the moment the St. Croix River here in Hudson, Wisconsin was formed. The tale of that day was woven into their legends like Bluefeather, and passed down through countless generations. I hope you enjoy Bluefeather, the survivor's account of a cataclysmic North America. On the western shores of a shallow ocean that once spanned large parts of what we now call North America, a tribe looked to the east, and there saw a blue feather springing out of the ocean in the distance. This blue feather was the initial discharge of Devil's Lake, pointing at the developing Great Lakes epicenter in what we call today central Michigan. The arcing away caused the discharge to look like a feather, a blue plasma feather, to the observers whose orientation, as we will continue to see, was on the western shore of that shallow North American ocean. Many legends of the Thunderbird tell of a rain which poured for days. Cloud cover was so thick that it blackened skies and caused large hail and extreme downpours. The legend of Bluefeather itself tells us that the survivors observed a serpentine fog beneath the cloud cover. Serpentine is a useful word, as serpents are both smooth in their movement and quite often green. In a storm, green clouds indicate extreme weather, as they are indicative of very tall and electrically charged cloud masses. A heavily charged green fog, moving with the serpent-like form of the auroral plasma, moves south. Many Native American legends tell of the water spirit and the Thunderbird causing a flood that spread across the land because of the battle. In Bluefeather, it is spoken of as the water spirit speaking in a feminine voice. As the Great Lakes discharge began developing, it caused the surface of the earth to be lifted, sending a slowly developing flood that gave some survivors who lived on the water's edge time to get in their canoes. We also have accounts that it was not a giant tsunami wave, as those living on higher ground also survived. Ultimately, the flood killed many. Legends say that the flood water was warm, made of salt water, had a very slow rise, and took 4 days to recede. Myths even capture the unique detail of fish left on dry land. Incredibly, these flood survival accounts tell us that the Native American cultures were using canoes at least 13,000 years ago. The Thunderbird, we are told next, spoke in a deep male voice. The Thunderbird was heard before it was seen. This entry records the moment when the Great Lakes material began being drawn up into the Great Lakes vortex. This is confirmed by the extreme water spouts spoken of in the next line. The vortex of the Great Lakes pulled more than water spouts up. It pulled limestone particles from what we now call the Great Lakes into the clouds, increasing the density and creating the impression during the backlight of lightning of a bird's head and body. Lake Superior. Eye, head, beak, mouth. Cathode, anode, counter-rotating bands of energy, indicative of plasma event. Thunderbird began to rise and spread its coronal loop wings. The Thunderbird is described as massive, much bigger than a pterodactyl. The complete form would have spanned the eastern portion of North America. Many legends speak of one or two whales being pulled up out of the water by the Thunderbird in the battle. On the eastern side of the vortex, Lake Ontario and Lake Erie were anodes surrounding the cathode of Grand Island. Because Grand Island was a cathode, these whales appeared to vacillate up and down, escaping and being recaptured by the Thunderbird. Other legends tell of a two-horned serpent, another reference to the two lakes and a different perspective by survivors. This thunderous vortex discharge, forming the Great Lakes, is also reflected in the legends that talk of the Great Thunderbird ripping up trees and eating rocks. Many tell of the fire and molten rocks that were thrown from the Thunderbird's eyes. We find evidence all across northern and western Wisconsin, where farmers have extracted large granite stones from their fields. Many stories include elements about stone. One legend tells of a village being turned to stone, mirroring the story of Lot's wife. The petrified tree stumps of the Badlands in South Dakota are a byproduct of a coronal loop, instantly condensing the carbon molecule. And so a village frozen in place is an incredible and true account of the fate of some tribe found after the event. Bluefeather then shoots a flaming arrow at the Thunderbird. This captures the moment when the discharge changed from an arc to central Michigan to an arc ending at Isle Royale. There are many incredible tales of the Thunderbird being stabbed, some being quite specific, that it was in the left eye by a woman. The woman represents that the discharge came from what they perceived as either a body of water, or at the very least, Mother Earth, and that it traveled through the left eye of the material being lifted away from the Lake Superior escarpment, giving the illusion of stabbing a bird in the left eye. Once the extraction of electrons shifted to the larger vortex circuit, it would have begun to satisfy the charge differential, and the arc from Devil's Lake would have the appearance of deflating, or rather the water spirit pulling the Thunderbird back to the ground as the coronal loops dissipated. The tale ends by capturing the near-impact moment. The world had become black from the particulate matter in the sky, blocking out sunlight. Many legends say that the whole earth rocked, not just the bluffs, and thunder and lightning accompanied the moment. So loud was the event that the last line of the story notes how still the air became. As the instantly frozen mammoths tell us, a frozen tundra set over the lands to the north, while fish were left on dry ground as the ocean drained down the newly formed Mississippi into the newly formed oceans. The Umashigo tribe of Canada then tell us of the Wendigo, cannibals that devoured men and animals as a famine of biblical proportions set in. From this legend, we also get confirmation of where they lived prior to the Cataclysm, on the southern shores of the sea, a sea that became lakes.
Ice heart, cold flesh, the chill wind blows. Hunger, all it feels is hunger. Eyes hollow, sunken, skin pale, ashen gray, stretched taut over its straining ribs, mouth slavering, covered in blood. It is famine. It is the hunger that should never be. And far to the north, by the lakes that should be seas, it stalks the people.
The story of Bluefeather is a real account of the North American cataclysm. As the water spirit and Bluefeather pulled the Thunderbird down, the St. Croix River here in Hudson, Wisconsin was formed. At some point after the event, survivors explored east to Devil's Lake, Wisconsin, and built an effigy mound of the Thunderbird on the shores of the lake to denote that this was the location where the water spirit brought the Thunderbird down. The bird faces west and slightly north. And it's my guess that it's pointing directly at the location of the survivors on that fateful day. It's an incredible and true story. It's one that's so important that it's one of the few legends that survived the decimation of the Native American population. Many people died that day. Many. We should honor their death and the survivors of the Cataclysm. They captured an incredible event in their oral history. We honor these survivors by acknowledging that the world is much stranger than we think, and our history is much different than we know. I need you to share this video with open-minded academics of every field. This story is foundational and can help us understand other deeply important questions like why we built an effigy to the Coronal Loops in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm going to have an honest look at the psychic or psi anomaly in my next video. Along the journey of writing this story, I had moments of incredible insight. What did I experience and why the word gnosis is important will be explored in that next video. Love your friends and share this video with them, please. Click subscribe, and as always, leave me your comments down below.